So first of all, I want to thank Keen for giving me this opportunity. But right after I thank Keen, I should thank Ken Blomer and Eddie Rojas for inviting me here. Do you remember this poster? Okay. This was the poster that Ken showed me more than a year ago and introduced me to Keen. And at that time, we were in the process of putting together this innovation center, and we were still not open yet. We actually just opened in April of last year. And I think this April will be like 1 year at that 27th or so. So at that point in time, we talked about maybe doing some kind of an innovation challenge with the students. And that's when Ken introduced me to Keen. And he showed me this poster, and as I started looking through this, I saw all these words like curiosity, connections, and creating value. And I said, where was all this when I was in college? You know, we were just told to take exams and graduate and find a job and do all the things that we're supposed to do, and I guess we didn't do too badly, but, you know, I always wonder, you know, if I had something like Keen and if I had the kind of teachers that you all seem to be, teaching me, you know, wonder what would have happened. Anyway, the point is when I looked at this poster and I started reading about all the things that you all are doing, I said, this is exactly what we are trying to do. That's where the conversation started, and that's the reason why I'm here. So that video that you saw is actually the innovation center that is on the University of Dayton campus in Dayton, Ohio. And it is, as a video says, it is about a 40,000 square foot facility. But for you to understand how a large Midwestern, very conservative company in a conservative industry can actually spend $20 million and do something like this, and then to have someone like me that has worked there for only 27 years to be standing here in front of you and talking like this, you need to get a little bit more data on us. You'll appreciate where we are and what we're doing once you realize where we came from. We are about over 125 years old as a company, headquartered in St. Louis, $22 billion in revenue, and we're in pretty much every country around the world. There's probably not a single country where we don't have a presence. We are truly a global company with over 50% of our sales coming from overseas. How are we classified and what areas do we do business in? Those are the 5 business platforms that you see there. Process, industrial, network, climate, commercial, and residential. This is not what you would call California, Silicon Valley kind of thing. This is the bread and butter stuff. So if you're sitting here today in this building, there's a large number of Emerson products in this building that's actually enabling us to have this meeting here today. You live in a home, there's Emerson all around you. There's probably about 19 to 20 different Emerson products around you in your house that you don't even know about. You travel by bus, you travel by train, there's Emerson there too. You go to a restaurant, the restaurant's probably one of those places where there's the highest density of Emerson products. You go shopping in a grocery store, there's Emerson there as well. So we are all around you and we make it possible for us all to do the things we do, but that's how we are broken out. And we're in the process of reorganizing ourselves into 2 groups, and I'm from the commercial and residential section that you see on the far right. It's one of 2 groups now going forward. Like everybody else, consumer preferences, technology changes, regulations. Regulations are actually, some of us think of regulations as helping us with our innovation, because when we come up with a regulation and we know when it's coming, et cetera, we can actually do something about it. So all these are factors that affect Emerson. And we were doing very well, meeting all of these changes and growing very well, but not fast enough. And we knew that if we wanted to do something different, we had to do something different. And that's when this whole idea of building an innovation center and changing all of the way we'd go about doing things came about. This was back in 2013. And we started talking to the University of Dayton. And what you see here, in my mind, I know everybody looks at the house and they look at the grocery store and they look at the restaurant and it all looks so nice and cool. But to me, this is the most important place. This is where we all get together, collaborate, talk about the problem, exercise our curiosity, and gather insights, information, data, make insights. Everything that I'm telling you is exactly what is there in your poster. And then once we get all those insights, that's when we start looking for opportunities. And so once we find the opportunities, then we start making hypotheses and so on and so forth. All of that happens in this space. And we designed it in such a way that it would be very attractive, open, and like I said, there's no offices, there's no cubicles, everything is open, and there's plenty of colors, which, by the way, for a conservative Midwestern company like us in Ohio, this much orange is just a little bit too much. So what do? More than 2 years ago, some of you may or may not know about these people, but they're called the Wright Brothers Institute. They're actually based in Dayton, Ohio. And it's about a 13, 14-year-old innovation group that is part of the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So we worked with them in trying to help us create what is it that we wanted to do, and this is what we came up with. Ideation is what we do at the Helix. And in order to ideate, what do we ideate around? We ideate around problems, and then we try to come up with solutions. All these things are pretty much stuff that you'll see anywhere and everywhere. But one of the things we realized was that we have to have a different approach. And we learned that about 2 years ago, and we started this. I know some of you cannot see it from the back, but I will say that those words in the middle are really what's important. Pretty much everything we do is broken out into 4 phases: discovery, understanding, generation of ideas, prototypes, and so on, and then synthesizing all of that together into a business opportunity. What is different from a startup is Emerson's not a startup. Emerson's made up of business units that all have to meet this week's and this month's and this quarter's quota in terms of sales and profit and so on and so forth. So how do we behave like a startup and be able to take these ideas and take them into the business units, which is basically the last step of this process? That's going to be a challenge. And I'm standing here in front of you talking about this, and I will tell you that we haven't yet rolled out the first idea out of the center yet. So we're I'd say about 3 months away from probably getting the first one sent out of the center. But everything that we're doing appears to be moving in the right direction. Notice that I say that this is unlike new product development process. Those of you that are familiar with NPD processes know that the first word that comes into everybody's mind as soon as you say NPD is a funnel. Okay, well, I don't have a funnel here because I loop around. Sometimes I go back, which is all part of your Keen poster again. I want to go back and I want to keep tying back to the Keen poster. Again, I apologize. You can't see all of this, but let me read out some of those words there. What kind of competencies am I looking for? These are the competencies that I want with the people at the center. Curiosity, being able to envision the future, listening to understand, managing complexity, because information that comes to you is not always presented the right way. It's often jumbled up. Sometimes too many things come together. Demonstrating flexibility, leveraging technical expertise, discipline and initiative. You need that if you have to execute something. The ability to take risks and learning from mistakes and collaborative relationships. There is nothing here that is not on your Keen poster. And this is why it shocked me, because these are the kind of things that I had on our charts and our boards, and I was looking at all of this, and then lo and behold, I see this poster, and I realize that pretty much everything is in there, except for a couple of things that I would emphasize. What I've learned in the last 2 years is that there's a couple of things that actually stand out for me in all of these, and so I just want to mention that. The first one is this. I didn't realize how much diversity in a team was important. Okay, and I don't mean diversity in the traditional sense of the word. I mean diversity in terms of thinking, in terms of experience, in terms of background. When I put together a team of people, initially that's what happened. About December of 2015, we put a team of people together. And I realized that when we first started embarking on this problem space, we were discussing a particular problem in the home space. And all of a sudden, it looked like we were all agreeing on so many things. And it was so beautiful because the whole team was working so well together. And then about a week later, we actually had a slightly different workshop. And this time we had a nurse, a homemaker, and a physician, and people from universities and students, and we had a very diverse group. And they were not all engineers. Of the 18 people, only 2 were engineers. And we were talking about an engineering problem. Okay? Think about that. 2 out of the 18 people on the team were engineers, and we were talking about an engineering problem. How is that possible? Well, this engineering problem happens to be in the home, and all 18 people live in the home and experience the problem in their own way. And that's one of the things I want to point out is when the 18 people started talking and sharing their version of what the problem was, our whole idea of what the problem set was completely changed. Okay, we realized that what we originally thought was a problem when we had a group of 10 engineers getting together and talking about it was not the problem at all. One of the issues in trying to solve a problem and turning it into a good business idea is very often you're solving the wrong problem. If you're solving the wrong problem, no matter how beautiful the solution is, no one's going to buy it. And so solving the right problem becomes very, very important. And the only way you can do that is if you bring diversity into the picture. Pretty much everything I learned in my life, I learned from Alice in Wonderland and a couple of other books. Okay, so if you haven't read, how many of you have not read Alice in Wonderland? I'm talking about original. Okay, don't go watch the movie, read the original. It is truly an awesome book. I probably have read it about 100 times, so I can recite all these lines, from memory. But the point that Humpty Dumpty makes is this, everybody is the same. What do I mean by that? Pretty much everybody here is from the university. There's no diversity there at all, okay? And so if you all got together to talk about something, yes, you will come up with awesome things, but it won't be nearly as awesome as what you would come up with if you actually talked about the same thing with people that had nothing to do with the university, okay? That's my first point. Don't know what I did with the clicker. Yeah, disruptive solutions don't happen if you have like-minded thinking. And this is actually related to that. If you have not read this book, I would suggest you do that. It's an easy read. It's called The Medici Effect. Many of you, I'm sure, know about this already. It's a really interesting book because it talks about this diversity. It talks about the value of diversity. The value of diversity is that you actually come up with a lot more disruptive and cool things when you bring people with diverse backgrounds together. He talks about these islands right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where all the sailors, when they gathered, because that was a spot where they all would gather back in the old days to refuel and so on, and they would actually exchange ideas from around the world. And if you notice, pretty much anything in history, anytime you have people from various parts of the world coming together, that's where the best things have actually happened. Granted, some bad things have happened too, but some of the great things happen because of this possibility of these intersections. And what I wanted to say here was, when I was thinking about it, I thought about the helix as an intersection. It has become an intersection for us. I did not anticipate that, but it has become that. That was an unintended consequence. But I started thinking about universities and colleges. I mean, how much more of an intersection place can you find? Every university and college that you all belong to is actually such a beautiful place where you have engineers and art majors and finance and business and people from around the world coming together. So bring more such. Encourage your engineering students in the Keen program, when they put a team together, suggest to them, if this is a problem that you're solving in the real world, which is what most of the time we do, go get some people that are not thinkers like you. Get people that disagree with you. Get people that will actually be disruptive and ask you stupid questions, the answers for which everybody knows, because that is when you'll actually be able to peel away all the various layers and get to the true problem that you have to solve. So I want to leave you with these 4 points. One is, in the last 2 or 3 years, as I worked on all of this, I realized that dwelling in the problem space and understanding is something that I don't do very well, okay? That is something that I have to consciously do because I'm an engineer. Engineering is my background, which means I'm here to solve problems. If I'm not solving problems 10 seconds after you've opened your mouth to speak to me, that means I have actually missed out, right? I mean, you may not think that I'm a good engineer if I don't give you an answer right away. What I've taught myself more and more now is to listen, because the problem that you're hearing the first time and the second time and the third time around is not the real problem, okay? That's one. The second thing I haven't talked about at all is what is good enough? Engineers think that you have to solve every problem to the 10th decimal, because after all, the computer and the calculator, does anybody know what a calculator is anymore? Anyway, or one of those slide rules. Okay, knowing what is good enough is actually very, very important. You won't know what is good enough if you don't know what the problem is. Why do I say knowing what is good enough? Because I can always find a perfect solution tomorrow. And if I'm always on the quest, I'll never get anything done. You need to know to solve this problem to this extent, this is good enough, let's move, and then we'll improve on it at a later time. The third thing I already talked about, and that is diversity. Do not bring people together that all think alike. You will come up with good ideas. You will not come up with great ideas. And the last point that I want to make is intersections. Encourage people to seek intersections. The Starbucks coffee shop is actually a great place. It is a good intersection place. If you could just sit there and listen to everybody talk, which is probably not a good thing to do, but anyway. So, this picture I always find interesting. I used this picture once when I wanted to talk to our Emerson executives about what we are trying to do at the Helix. And I said, I'm not so sure that I will know the true impact of what I'm doing at the Helix for many, many years to come. I'm actually going to see the first ripple, but I will not be around to see the 10th or the 15th ripple. But I think it's going to happen. I think we're changing Emerson. We're creating an entrepreneurial mindset within Emerson, and one day that's going to pay off. It's going to pay off in big ways. I look at what Keen is doing, and I titled this Catalyst for Transformation because that's exactly what you are, that's exactly what we are trying to do at the Helix. We're trying to transform something or somebody, or some organization or some group of people. You're doing the same thing with all the students. Whether they're engineering students or non-engineering students, it doesn't matter. You are trying to create this entrepreneurial mindset. That mindset is so important. They will not all become entrepreneurs, but they will carry that mindset throughout their career. And they will remember the things that they learned in school. And I think you will not see the 100th ripple, but it will go very far. Thank you very much.